Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be an urban fantasy / paranormal romance recommendations video, and the general theme here is like detectives and government workers. But here I'm going to talk about 4 different series. One of them we have a private detective, one of them we follow an arson investigator, another is a collections agent, and then the last is a guy who's basically having to work with the government because of blackmail. So we will go ahead and get started. And the first series that I will talk about today is the Nightside series by Simon R. Green. So the first book is Something from the Nightside. This I think is a 12-book series and it ended in 2012. So it's an older series, you know, definitely finished if you want to read and binge them. But basically we have our main character John Taylor, who is kind of a private detective. He's got this knack for finding lost things. So he's been, in the first one, he's been hired to go into the Nightside, which is this otherworldly realm in the center of London where fantasy and reality share a renting space and the sun never shines. So throughout, obviously we follow John as he is, you know, investigating things, trying to track down stuff in the Nightside. Generally, we obviously learn more about John as the series progresses and, you know, his background and things like that. And it looks like I think I've given most of these books 3 stars. I think I gave the first one 4 stars. I will say I do specifically remember this series being incredibly repetitive in terms of phrases that come up over and over again. So if you do pick this up, and I think it is still worthwhile, but I would highly suggest don't binge read this, because otherwise, if you're anything like me, once you start noticing these phrases coming up over and over again, you get a little bit irritated. So, you know, just FYI. But I think we've got a variety of really interesting characters. I'm trying to remember the name right now. I feel like his name is Razor Eddie. That's who it is. Yes. Good job, Steph. I'm impressed with myself. It's been so long since I've read this series, but he has a lot of razors on him at all times and is kind of a bit of a killer. And then, you know, we have Susie who comes up and she's a bounty hunter. There's a lot of really crazy large scale, almost horror things. I remember in one of the books there's this house that's actually alive and is trying to consume people. There's a lot of, I guess, more abstract, I don't know if it's necessarily abstract horror, but maybe things that you would see more in a Lovecraft type novel. But I do generally remember enjoying this. It's definitely a much darker series. There's a lot of messed up stuff going on in the Nightside. It's not for the faint of heart, I would say. There's probably some content warnings that I'm, you know, not remembering because it's been so long since I've read this. So, you know, if you are concerned about that, I would definitely take a look at that other Goodreads reviews to see what people are saying. But, you know, I just definitely remember enjoying the Nightside as a concept. You know, it's kind of this secret world that's really dark and messed up, and, you know, people want to go there to do these, not so great things. You know, I think the main character, John, is not the most likable person. There's definitely more to him than initially meets the eye. He's got, his special abilities are really interesting. I think there were some kind of more amusing moments, but generally, it's a fairly dark tone, I mentioned. This is, more of a tentative recommendation since, you know, I did rate these, most of them 3 stars. Again, it is, I'm going to repeat myself, it is very repetitive. So, yeah, I think that this will appeal to some people, but certainly not to everybody. The next series I'll talk about is, I'm going to do my best to pronounce this, because I think it's a Polish last name, Anya Kalinczyk series by Laura Bickle. And so Anya is an arson investigator, and this is a 2-book series. The first one is Embers, and the second is Sparks, and these came out in 2010, it looks like. So again, an older series. This takes place in Detroit, and there's a whole bunch of unrest going on, and it's leading to, you know, feeding the undercurrent of Detroit's unease. So the city has been increasingly invaded by phantoms and is now facing a malevolent force that further stokes fear and chaos throughout the city. So Anya spends her days as this arson investigator and her nights pursuing malicious spirits with a team of eccentric ghost hunters. So she actually is a psychic medium, so she's a lantern, and she thinks that there's this supernatural arsonist that's setting blazes to summon a fiery ancient entity that will leave the city in cinders. And basically she has a salamander familiar and this paranormal investigation team, and they're all trying to stop this from happening. So the second one, it looks like there's an element of spontaneous human combustion. It looks like I rated both of these 3 stars, but it's one of those things where it's been so long since I've read it, and like I don't entirely remember why I only rated it 3 stars, because I do remember generally enjoying it, and I think it's one of her stronger series from what I remember. But I think, you know, this general premise of an arson investigator is interesting. I think this is the only one I've ever seen who has that sort of main character. I like how Anya has this salamander familiar, and I seem to remember there's like some really cool stuff that happens with that. So it's cool, you know. I think I generally, again, it's been so long since I read it, but I generally remember liking Anya, and I think that this was a pretty interesting investigation, and I feel like there were some elements where you like follow the investigation with her as she's trying to figure out, you know, is it arson, is it supernatural, what's going on here. I like, you know, the general ghost hunting expedition. I think that's super interesting. I guess that's all I'll say about it, but I do seem to specifically remember the salamander being the best part. So I guess there was like a novella, book 2.5 called Ashes that was published in 2017 and, you know, is revisiting this. I have not read that. I might have to check that out. We shall see. We'll move to the next series, which is the Valkyrie Collections, and this is by McClellan. The first book is Uncanny Collateral, and the second is Blood Tally. And so the second one just came out this year, so this is a newer series, I think still ongoing. But basically, we follow a collections agent, and I guess I should mention, I rated both of these 4 stars. So we follow Alec, who is a collection agent who works for supernatural elements of the world. He's a literal slave to his job. He's forced to be a collection agent. So Death comes looking for someone to track down a thief, and Alec is thrown into a mess here. And basically, you know, the consequences of failure become dire. He has just a few leads, and the clock is ticking. So he's aided by Maggie, who is an ancient djinn with a complex past, and so he's trying to find this stolen property, save the world. I actually helpfully wrote a review here, so that's handy. And this is a more fresh series that I've read. So these are more like novella length, I think. Looking at the first one, it looks like I was satisfied with how it ended and do want to learn more about the world, but, you know, again, with it being a little bit shorter, you don't get as much world building as, you know, like a full-length novel, but I was still very much interested in what I got, and, you know, obviously did keep reading this series. I liked the main character, Alec. He comes from troll ancestry and has some magical tattoos, which is exciting, and then this Jen Maggie is also really interesting. And, you know, in the first book you learn a little bit more about their past, and there's imps, jinn, vampires, and other supernatural creatures in this world as well, so that's exciting. So this mystery of finding some missing souls was awesome. The second one I seem to remember was, you know, even stronger. I guess I read an early version, so I don't know how much it changed, but we continue a lot of the storylines. We have a vampire thrall stealing a blood tally, which is like a book of contracts of a master vampire for its thralls, and Alec is supposed to find this thrall, and, you know, we get even more fun creatures here, including a sphinx. So basically, like, I think this is a really fun, fast-paced urban fantasy book. I do really enjoy McClellan's writing. He wrote the Powder Mage series and the follow-up Gods of Blood and Powder series, which I still need to finish, but I think these are really enjoyable. He's got, you know, a good sense of like fun magic systems and things like that. And, you know, it looks like these books are, you know, about 150 pages, so definitely on the shorter end of things, but really easy to read and get through. They're super fun. Definitely recommend that. And then the last book I will actually talk about today is a standalone, and that's All Seeing Eye by Rob Thurman. So Rob Thurman wrote the Cal Leandro series, which I think I have talked about previously in one of these videos. Basically here, we have our main character Jackson, and he has abilities to kind of like read things from objects. So basically, you know, he initially picked up a small pink shoe from the grass, and this changed his life. So it's like, not only did its presence mean that his sister Tessa was dead, murdered and stuffed into the deep black water of a narrow well, but the shoe itself told him so. So then I guess this triggers a family massacre, and this kind of like throws his life into like a tailspin. So, you know, he becomes the all-seeing eye at a carnival. He's a psychic for hire, and basically the government ends up blackmailing him, and he's supposed to help the military contain the aftermath of a bizarre experiment gone violently wrong. So This I rated 5 stars, and I don't remember a ton about it, I'll be honest. This came out in 2012, so I think I read it in undergrad. But I do specifically remember it being very fast-paced and just like flying through it because I was like, I need to know what's going on. It's such an interesting story. I always enjoy, this sort of magic where, people can read some sort of like history or get something from an object. I think that's super cool. We've got this murder mystery background sort of element, which is always very interesting to me. Seem to remember the experiment also, like this whole, government storyline being also like super cool. The main character, I think, is somewhat reminiscent of Leandros, kind of like a snarky main character, a little bit of an anti-hero. I think there were some kind of spooky elements, but I think this is more like of a thriller than full-blown horror. It is a darker urban fantasy, but I would definitely recommend it. So of the books and series that I talked about today, I think I would, recommend All Seeing Eye, The Highest, as well as the Valkyrie Collections series. I think those are like the strongest ones. And definitely obviously I read the Valkyrie Collections fairly recently, so that stands up pretty well. But I do specifically remember All Seeing Eye being very good. So I think that if you were to choose from this list, choose one of those. But obviously, I still enjoyed my time with these, even if there are some flaws in some of the series. But, I think that I just wanted to mention them in case something stands out to you more than others. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or think you might pick them up. For your question of the day, I guess, have you ever read another book that follows an arson investigator? I don't know, that's a hard question, but, or you can also just leave an emoji if you want to. I do have a Discord channel, and if you want to join that, the link is in the description below. I hope you're all having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.